Welcome to the Sacred Partnership Podcast, where relationships become the emotional, erotic, and spiritual adventure of a lifetime. I'm your host, Sarah Olivia. I'm a certified relationship and sex coach, a practitioner and teacher of the neo-tantric arts, and a lifelong seeker on the spiritual path. I know from my own decade-long partnership that the depth of connection, the level of mind-blowing intimacy, and the feeling of sacred devotion with a beloved, all of the reasons why we get into a relationship in the first place, these things require intention, practice, and skill. And that's what I'm teaching here. Each week, I will be weaving ancient wisdom, the most impactful relational teachings, as well as my own lived experience on this path, so that you and your beloved can create a partnership which feels rich with aliveness, truth, pleasure, and devotion. So get comfy and let's dive in. Hello, so lovely to be back. I'm so excited for this first meaty, juicy episode. We're really jumping in today, and I really wanted to let you know that I'm not going to be holding anything back in these episodes. There's absolutely no reason for me to hold anything back when I share content online, because there's no sort of secret sauce, there's no knowledge that belongs to me, and the magic of my work is in being held in sacred coaching containers, in deep ritual with your partner live. But everything that I know, every gem is available to you here, will be available to you here week on week. So if you really commit to showing up in this space, the exchange in this space is your attention, right? That's all I'm asking. And so I invite your investment of your attention, because if you actually commit to this space and to these teachings, you could have a completely transformed relationship in a few months even, and definitely within a year. I have my cat with me sitting on my lap and he's just like licking my wrist. I don't know what that's about. Okay. So today I'm going to start simple. I want to talk about the 3 stages of love, the 3 stages of relationships that we move through the life cycle of our partnerships. This is such an incredibly helpful model to work with and to understand, so that we can really track where we might be in the lifespan of our relationship, and so that we can kind of understand what might be happening and what we need to bring to meet our partnership where it is. One of the biggest tragedies that I see happening in relationships is we hold the beginning of the relationship, the honeymoon phase, on a pedestal and spend our entire relationship trying to get back to that. Like, that was the height of our connection. That was the height of our desire, the height of our lust and longing for each other. That's when we had the best sex. That's when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. And now 5, 10, 15 years later, it's just a shadow of that. We are really running on autopilot. We love each other, but there's not that much to it, right? And if we could, we'd rather be back in that honeymoon phase. I find this so sad and totally understandable. I find it completely understandable. I have done the same thing. And the reality is there are incredibly heightened elements of the honeymoon phase, which are physiological. They are hormonal. When we are in a new relationship, in order for us to stay interested, essentially, we produce so much more dopamine and oxytocin when we are with the person that we are starting a relationship with. And then when we are apart from them, our serotonin levels will drop to below their normal range, so that we feel the longing, so that we feel the love sickness to be around them. So it is like a drug, and I acknowledge that. However, there is something so much more powerful, more beautiful, and profound that can be accessed later in a relationship when you do the work, when you engage in the tools and practices of sacred partnership. And that is a combination of learning how to communicate well so that you can fight well, so that you can hold space for each other and really get to know each other on a deeper level than you would ever get to know each other in the honeymoon phase. Connection must be nourished and nurtured, especially when you don't have this constant pull of all I want to do is spend time with you. And then, of course, there is the ever expanding, forever adventure of sex. Right? Sex is not something for us to fall into a rut with, to have the same few moves that we do. It always goes the same way. God, how incredibly frustrating and boring. That's not it, right? There is a true love, deeply alive and erotic connection possible in long-term relationships. It just takes effort, it takes work. So that is my impassioned plea for you to really lean into the discomfort and challenge your partner. If your partner is not willing to do the work, flat out not willing, and you know that you want more, that might be a sign that it is not the right partnership. And I say that with so much love, but you have one wild and precious life, as Glennon Doyle says. Why waste it with somebody that does not care to move with you to the heights of your emotional, erotic, and spiritual potential? So, our actual topic today, as I said, is the 3 stages of love. The 3 stages of love. The first stage of love, also known as the honeymoon phase, is projectional love. And it is called projectional love because we meet the person that we fall in love with and we project all of our needs, our unmet needs, all of our deepest desires for what we wanted to get from our caregivers, all of the desires for a partner. We project all of that onto this person. We see them as this perfect person who we are going to heal through, who we are going to get what we did not get before, who is going to finally be the one to love our inner child, to make us feel seen and safe and secure. We project all of that onto our partner. It creates intense longing for this person. It is that feeling of, oh, I know you. You're the person that I've been looking for all along. I feel like I've known you a lifetime, because they are reminding you most often of some quality in your original caregiver that you loved and some quality that you wanted to get from them. And that feeling of like, are you complete me? Right? Beautiful experience. And especially the first time you experience it. Oh, magical, delicious, so intense. And also doomed to end. It is not possible to stay in that space while also genuinely knowing and seeing our partners. One of the ways that I do sometimes see the projectional love phase being extended is actually in quite unhealthy dynamics where there is maybe a lot of anxiety and avoidance, because when we have this dynamic of one person really pulling away and making themselves unknowable, it maintains a little bit that feeling of mystery, intrigue, desire, longing. But that is more of an anxious and less of an excitement experience. So we have the honeymoon phase, the projectional love phase. This person is perfect. And what I will say is, and this is imago theory, imago partnership theory, which I think rings true in a lot of cases, and you can see if this lands for you and your partner. Often the partnerships with the most chemistry, the most intense honeymoon phases of like, wow, I'm so besotted with this person, will then also have the potential for the most challenge later in the partnership. And this is because the deeper the unmet need, the deeper the recognition of this is the person that can meet this need, this is the person that can heal the wound, this is the person that can meet my inner child and love her finally. The deeper that recognition, the harder the fall when you realize that that is not your partner's job. You know what's even better than talking about sacred partnership? Practicing it. So I created a free sacred date night for you and your beloved. It's a 30-minute guided audio practice for you and your beloved to get emotionally naked together, and if you like, you can get actually naked too, fall even deeper in love, and maybe even lead into some epic and magical lovemaking. If this sounds like something you want access to, and I can think of no good reason why you wouldn't want access to this, you can head down to the link in the show notes or head over to saraholivia.com and click on the top bar of any page, and that will take you to access the practice. Have so much fun, enjoy, and let me know how it goes. So once we have moved through the honeymoon phase, once we have moved through this phase of projectional love, we move into the sticky, icky, gritty part of relationships, which many people will avoid, either through breaking up or going into a deep avoidance for the sake of longevity in the partnership, but it essentially means that you stultify in a very surface level of just kind of coexisting, which is definitely not my bag. That's not something I can cope with, obviously. Otherwise, why would I be doing this work? We move into the relational love phase. We move out of the projectional love phase into the relational love phase, and this is where we start to realize that our partner is not the completion of us. They are a separate entity with their own shortcomings, with their own flaws, and they're also just not going to be able to give us exactly what we thought they were going to give us. It's not a conscious thought, but this is something that happens on a very unconscious level that can lead to so much disappointment and rupture. And often the qualities that attract us, the very unconscious, deeper qualities that attract us to our partner in the first place, that make us feel like they are this person that's going to magically heal and complete us, are also the same qualities which will trigger us to hell. So you can move from this state of like, you complete me, to you trigger the fuck out of me. It is an invitation in this moment to do the work. This is when our partner is reflecting to us the things that we have not yet examined, the things that we need to see, to learn, to heal, to integrate. Love phase is also usually the moment that basically all of the things that we maybe don't love so much about our partner, don't like so much about our partner, aren't compatible with how like we want to live, especially if we're cohabiting. Once we move out of the projectional love phase, where kind of anything they do is fine and beautiful and whatever, I can just deal with it because I fancy the pants off them so much and they're so magical and this is the best thing ever. Once we move into the relational love phase, all of these differences and kind of potentials for conflict can emerge. A lack of communication skill can also emerge here if you have never done any conscious communication work, and everything can become much more reactive. There is much more capacity for rupture. This is, of course, going to be wildly variable for different partnerships, depending on your conflict style, depending on your attachment style, but this is broadly speaking quite a common experience. So what I see happening here is people can take like three routes. People can take three routes when they move into the relational love phase. They can ignore it. They can decide, whether it's because they grew up in a family, for example, where like voicing boundaries or frustrations or anything even at all negative was like not acceptable, and who are deeply afraid of any kind of conflict. This is quite a common route to go on. Avoid and just move into this often very pleasant but very superficial mode of relating. Where you can love each other, you can have a nice time, maybe there's some nice sex and babies. It's not going to rock anyone's world. And because you don't have necessarily the crunchy rupture element, which really gives you the impetus to do the deeper work and to do the repair and to do the connection practices, I can see this as like a ceiling of experience. Option 2 is you can break up and be like, nope. Actually, there's 4. There's 4 options. Option 1 is the superficial avoid. Option 2, break up. This is very common, very, very normal for people to, basically live out their entire relational lives only experiencing projectional love. And as soon as you move into relational love, thinking this hasn't worked and dropping it and going to the next relationship. So it's like serial monogamy. Option 3 is you become very, very conflictual in your relationship. The relationship becomes volatile and nothing really evolves from there. It's just cycles of volatility. There's cycles of rupture and superficial repair, moments of like, oh, this is such a relief because we're no longer fighting, but it just it cycles. And then the 4th option, which is the best option, by the way, is to meet what is happening, is to do the work, is to go deeper into the exploration. It is often the case that you will go into option 3 of it's rupture and moments of relief. And then at some point you realize like this is absolutely not working. This is not tenable. We're either going to break up or we need to do the work. So that's pretty normal. Very, very normal. Many, many partners who go into the path of sacred partnership, the path of true love, really conscious divine union, have had extreme challenge, myself included. My relationship, when it moved from the honeymoon phase to the relationship phase, the projectional to the relational, was a shit show. It is no coincidence that I'm doing this work. I'm not doing this work from a space of this has all been daisies and I want to teach you how to make it like perfect and rainbows and butterflies. Not at all. Because I know that I would not have the relationship that I have. We wouldn't be together if it weren't for this work. So, relational. This is the challenging bit. This is also, you can look at this in the sort of mythic way of this is the tragic. So there's the pre-tragic, the tragic, and then the post-tragic. This is the tragic. This is where it's difficult. This is the most difficult journey, I think, that many people can ever go on, is to really show up for this. It's a huge, huge amount of stripping back layers of the ego, of going to the deepest parts of yourself and saying, I am the one. I am the one to love myself. I am the one to meet my inner child, not my partner. Taking such radical self-responsibility. And also utilizing the clarity that comes from the reflection in our relationship, what we get to see through our partner's experience of us, because it's just a reflection back. Utilizing that reflection to grow. Utilizing that reflection to become a better partner every single day. And we move from fighting against each other, from feeling let down and hurt and needing to win over our partner. We move from fighting against to fighting for. So when we move through relational love, through this phase, we don't end up with 0 fighting. We get much better at it. Communication gets better, self-regulation gets better, it becomes much safer. But we start fighting for. We start fighting for the greatness of our partner. We start fighting for the greatness of the relationship, for the connection, for the truth, for the honesty. It's very different. So this is one of the most important concepts for you to take away from today. Are you fighting against or are you fighting for? If you are feeling the soul level call to sacred partnership, If you want to walk the path of devotion and ever-evolving aliveness with your beloved, the Sacred Partnership Portal is your invitation and your initiation. This 6-month journey is the answer to your feeling that there could and should be more to your relationship and sex life. The reality is that most relationships are operating on autopilot within a tiny spectrum of what we are capable of experiencing with our beloved. Sacred Partnership is the key to unlocking a full spectrum, intentional experience of love, pleasure, and devotion. It is my highest offering, and it is the emotional, erotic, and spiritual adventure of a lifetime. You can reach out to me directly on any platform or find a link to inquire in the show notes. When we are in the relational love phase, we will move through cycles. Right? This is not just a linear progress, so it just gets better and better. We will go through seasons of contraction, so like winter, where rupture might emerge. There will be something new, some new layer, some new level of examination, of unpeeling, unlearning. And then we move into spring, summer, where there will be like heightened experiences of feeling so much connection. And it's like an upward spiral, but we move through these different seasons. That is very normal, really important to understand that you can expect these seasons in partnership. We can't always be in summer. The winter exists for a reason, so that we can shed, so that we can go into shadow, and then the light, the brightness, the lightness is even more, is even better. But there is an end. There is an end in sight. The relational love phase, which, you know, my teacher, when she kind of introduced me to this, expressed that as something that you'll kind of experience probably up to like year 7 or 8 of the relationship. So the first phase, the projectional love, this is a couple of years, 1 to 2 years. I find if you move in together within those 2 years, it might come to an end sooner because you're just confronted with each other more. But around the 7-8 year mark, if you have been doing the work, crucially, if you have been doing the work, and if you've been doing the work, you probably can accelerate this, but around the 7-8 year mark, you can move from your relational love to the true love phase. This is the post-tragic. This is where there is actually the capacity to feel more enraptured, more in love, more passionate, more in total awe and devotion of your partner and of the relationship than you ever were in the projectional love phase, because this is when you know them, you see them, you have been to the depths together, you've been to hell and back, and you have chosen each other again and again. And there is something like utterly precious and profound in that. And it really, like, it takes my breath and my words away to think about how precious that stage is. And that's something that my partner and I only reached like last year sometime. And there's still moments, there can still be moments of rupture. It's not that everything falls away, but it is a feeling of such utter divine love that is just not comparable to the initial highs. It is a depth. If you think about energetically, the initial high is like, it's very heady, it's very expanded. The true love phase is grounded. It's grounded through the whole energy body, and it's something that can be activated intentionally through sex, through different practice, and you can become these energy catalysts for each other. You can become divine awakening catalysts for each other, where you come into sacred space together, you come into ritual space together, whether it's just eye gazing, breathing together, or making love with tantric tools, with consecration, with breath, all of these different tools that we have to have sacred sex. And you can awaken You can go into these heightened states, and that is something even more magical than what we have in the honeymoon phase. So these are the stages. These are the stages of our love. These are the stages that most long-term relationships will go through. And what I will say is some people come into relationships with a lot less baggage. Some people come into relationships with having had really beautiful, really secure upbringings, really secure relationships with their caregivers. And that will soften the intensity of the relational love. That will soften the intensity of the potential for rupture. So it doesn't mean that there's like no chemistry in your relationship if there's no rupture. What I would say is there is a courage to show yourself fully, a courage to be fully expressed, which can be really challenging. And sometimes when we are like nice, it's actually a fear and avoidance of expression, a fear and avoidance of loss, abandonment. So there's like, am I really anchored and secure? And actually there's just like nothing really to work on here, to work through? Or am I nice and conflict avoidant, and this is actually hampering the potential for growth, healing, connection between the two of us? So that's an important distinction to make. But if you are genuinely secure, genuinely really, really anchored, really healed in yourself, and this could especially be the case if you come into a relationship much later, where you've had a few relationships already, where you've like gone through the shit with someone else, you can actually move towards that true love phase much more smoothly, much more easily. The beauty is that the tools of sacred partnership apply in every situation. Whether you notice that you are avoidant of going into it, you can still deepen your connection. You can still hold space for radical truth and honesty. You can still have incredible tantric sex. If you are in constant rupture, this is especially when you need these tools, right? This is when we need the tools, the healing processes, the intentional ritual space of examination to transmute rupture into connection. Otherwise, it is a long road of volatility and stress. And if you are already in this like very centered, settled place, but you want to go deeper, if you're already very, very self-regulated, very self-possessed and self-responsible, and you have beautiful communication with your partner, you're like in a really like mature relationship, you can go deeper. Beautiful, beautiful. I think that is everything that I wanted to share about the stages of love. If you have questions, comment, email me, message me. I really genuinely want to know. This can be a conversation. I'm so curious, like, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in these stages and in these different expressions, especially of relational love? Where do you want to go? What would true love look like for you and your partner? My invitation is to ask yourself that. If you had a practice, a takeaway for this week, it is to look at your partnership through this lens. Like, what was that projectional love stage? You know, how did that manifest? What was I not seeing in my partner? What was I projecting? What did I think I was going to get that actually was my work to do? How does our relational love stage look? How is that manifested? What are the conflicts? What are the patterns that we keep repeating that are asking for us to look closer at? What would true love look like for us? Ask yourself those questions. It will reveal a lot. It really will reveal a lot. I love you. See you next week. Sacred beings and beloveds, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Sacred Partnership podcast. Let me know what landed, what impacted you, what resonated, and what are you going to be integrating this week? I really genuinely want to know. I truly appreciate your support in this work. So every time you review, rate, share, or just generally spread the word about what I'm doing here, it means the absolute world to me, and it really, really helps. So thank you. I'll see you next week. And for now, I am sending you all the love, sex, and magic in the world.